Welcome to the DEI Effect. I'm your host, Travis Brown, and I'm back with my good friend, Jackie Bledsoe, the author of The 7 Rings of Marriage. He's a speaker, he's a coach, businessman, author, entrepreneur, and he is my good friend. So on this segment, this is where we break down DEI. So let's talk about, what does DEI mean to you?
Yeah, I think it just means equal opportunity, and let your skills, the way you serve people, let that be what gets you in the door or the opportunity. And I think sometimes that doesn't take place.
Mm-hmm. And kind of in your world, as you know, obviously it's changed now in the history of kind of where you started in writing and speaking and stuff. But there hasn't been, it didn't feel like there's a lot of black couple authors that were kind of doing kind of your space. What was like kind of trailblazing that to some degree?
Yeah, I don't know if I feel like a trailblazer in it, but I definitely have seen the landscape change over time. The first speaking team that we got on, there was just us on stage. Mm-hmm. That was it. And honestly, I don't think there were any other minorities, anybody of color on stage with us at the time. But over the years, we've seen that change in the writing space, especially in the world that we're in. One of the things that got us into some doors was because people were recognizing, churches and different organizations were recognizing that there was a need for people to see faces that look like them.
Yeah.
And so that was some of our ends to some of those because we were the minority. Mm-hmm. And I think along with writing as well and in the marriage space as well, there's some bigger names, but there's not a whole lot in that space that we hang out a lot in. So it's good to see over the years how that has become more intentional and people have been more aware of it. Now, 2020 was a big year that a lot of that was exposed. We have definitely seen that happen since then. But even before then, some of the organizations that we work with now were being very intentional about that too.
You know, my wife and I, we've often talked about, Sunday is one of the most segregated places in America. It's like the segregation day in America, right? Because of church.
Yeah.
There's white church, black church. We belong to a church that's very, very different.
Yeah.
But by and large, a lot of marriage conferences and a lot of organizations in that space was either catering to, this is like a black church thing or kind of a white church thing.
Yeah.
So when it comes to being in this environment with diversity, equity, inclusion, like, why is that still a thing in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think some people are unaware, and you just live in your own box, in your own world. So you function from then, and everything works well. But you're not used to, like we're used to on a daily basis, looking to see if there are other black and brown faces around us.
Right. First thing, I walk into a restaurant, walk to a store, walk into whatever, and the first thing I notice is, are there any others like me?
Yep.
Like it's the first thing I always notice, right? And then quickly I can account for what the situation is and how that changes the environment. But what you mentioned was that so people are unaware, but like I get that there are some places in America still today where like a white culture may not see a black person,
right?
Or a black person doesn't really see many white people.
Yeah.
But even in the cultures like Indianapolis, right, where I don't know what the population numbers are, but there are predominantly black churches that still look predominantly black, and there are predominant white churches that still look that, and they don't go to work that way. They still see that.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to really unpack, in this situation, especially from the church.
Yeah. Yeah, I think part of it might be comfort as well. It's like, I'm comfortable with this. Am I going to have to change the way I act, the way I talk? I don't want to use the word integrate, but if we're in another situation where it's more diverse than what it normally is, and just be real, this may be the elephant in the room, and some people like it that way. It's like, I don't want to give up my seat or what we've been doing here. I want to be able to say these things or do these things without thinking in the back of my mind, how is that impacting someone else? Because I know everybody in here has the same experience as me. And so that's the real thing, is there are some choices being made like that. I'm not saying that's everybody, but some unaware, some very aware, and are making choices to continue.
Did you ever feel different or be received differently in white audiences versus black audience as a speaker?
I'll share one story. One of our early events that we did, and we went to an event in, we met a church from Alabama, like deep Alabama, South Alabama. And they did an event in Tennessee, in the mountains of Tennessee. And so we flew down there, they met us up there. And there was we got there, and me and Stefan were looking at each other like, there's nothing we have in common other than marriage and Jesus, literally. And so that was the first time we were like, I don't know how this is going to be. So I have to be honest, and like I was second guessing some of my illustrations. Will it go over? Will it be offensive? Will they understand it? But that was one of the ones that came out. But outside of that, I think what I've become comfortable in, and Stefana as well, and I think it's where kind of just this place we're in with content and live videos and all that is I am comfortable in my own skin. And this is how I talk. This is the references that I use. And some people are going to like that and some people are not. And we get feedback on some of our events, like survey feedback and comments, and you can see that. But a vast majority are people that received well what we were sharing.
What kind of comments? I'm just curious, because, I've heard you speak. I mean, I know how you speak, and I understand there's some jokes or language or things, but I can't imagine even something that you would say that that might trigger that.
Yeah, I don't think there's been anything mentioned as far as the diversity way. For me, I'll speak on what the comment I receive a lot, and if you're listening right now, watching right now, you probably hear it. Is I talk fast. When I get excited, I go fast. Okay. And so people are like, I can't understand what he's saying. He's going through blah, blah, blah. He's going too fast. There's been other comments about Stefana and her facial expression, her body language on stage. What they didn't receive that well. There were things that we said content wise that they didn't like. So there's but at the end of the day, it hasn't been, like I said, in the diversity and anything like that. But at the end of the day, and this is where I had to get comfortable myself. We were called to this because of who we are, not to be like somebody else. Right. And so we've got to deliver our authentic self and our authentic truth in the best way we can that can help people in whatever space that we're delivering, the marriage space, if we're helping people build broad audiences, whatever it may be. So with that being said, that has been kind of liberating. When
you first started to, and even now, how long did it take you to get comfortable to be yourself, all of your Black self on a stage? I can remember at times thinking about the way that I'm dressing on a stage. Yeah. And feeling like, is this culturally relevant to this white audience that I'm about to, go in, and they're going to give us our feedback and decide if they're going to give us a check. Yeah. Now I'm at a spot 9 times out of 10, I just show up how I want to show up, with something mojo up on it and some J's on and a tux and some J's on, right? Yeah. But even for me, that wasn't always a comfortable thing for me to own. Now I can. Did you have a moment or a time, or is there a period you got to a point where you're like, this is who we are?
Yeah, I think that has been, as far as where I look and approach on stage, I don't think there's a moment. It's been a gradual process. But I do say now, if I went back and looked at some images of some of our events in the past, I'd be like, man, why was I wearing that? Why was I just like that? Matter of fact, early on went to a series of meetings in Nashville. And when I went there, I liked what I wore that day, but now I look at it, I was like, I was dressing because of where I was going. Had some boots on. No, weren't necessarily cowboy boots, but they looked very close to it. Had a checkered shirt. I very rarely ever tucked my shirt in. I was tucked in with a belt. And I looked at it, I was like, okay. And I think I actually wore a jacket, a jacket that I don't even like today. Now, I wear suit jackets every once in a while, but I don't like the jacket today. And so I looked at myself, then I was like, that was not me. Now, we were literally just having this conversation. It's like, okay, what makes you most comfortable on stage? It's Stefana, my wife, and I talking on stage. And so we need to start making sure we're focusing on that. And so when we're on stage, we can just be ourselves and comfortably deliver. And so I'm going to speak for her a little bit from a woman's perspective on stage at Christian conferences. You're always cautious of what you're wearing if it's too revealing. And so I know that's been a thing for her. Not that she ever wore clothes that were super, super revealing, but you consciously do think of those things. But I think now we're at the point where it's like, all right, what kicks do I like to wear? What pants are most comfortable? What type of shirt? Most of the time I'm wearing t-shirts on stage or a hoodie like this on stage. Every once in a while I'll bring a button up. Yeah. But it's just me. And I think that over time we've gradually grown to that.
I think what's great is where we are in our culture is starting to finally adapt to that. And I think that's, I think with DEI we have a long way to go, especially when we get into equity and we start getting into leadership and you start getting into the corporate side of things that, there's a reason why there's still only 6 CEOs on the Fortune 500 that are, that look like us. So long way to go. but you start to see some improvements here and there. And I think one of them is the way you can show up on stage to speak, the way that you can own your voice, and the way that you can talk and be comfortable with your own words. And I think that's something that at least we're graduating to get there. So I'm glad to see that you're embracing that. You're moving in that realm. And
I can say y'all on stage.
Right.
Cool. That's how I talk.
Well, Jackie, thanks for stopping by, my man. I definitely appreciate it. For DEI Effect, it's a wrap.